So hi, I just said I was going to start at 9. It's actually 8 minutes before that. I'm just going to make sure everything's working and stuff. So it's morning here, Swedish time. It's actually a pretty lovely morning. I've got a fresh cup of coffee and I have set myself a nice little task to start out with. So if you have any questions, issues, or anything, just mention them in the chat. So I'm going to show the chat in the stream as well in a minute. Join in, sit down, relax, have a cup of coffee, and I'll get started in it. My idea here is to start on this little thing. Where am I? Here's the issue. 6676. Seg fault in OpenLDAP while using LDAP as. So oops, I have a little bit too many windows with my own voice and sound in it. So okay. Getting things in order. Okay. Morning, Jim. So here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you my editor and my terminal like this and get going. On the screen is a test 659, which is a different thing I worked on last night. It turns out, well, I can actually just sort of start with that as a little warm-up. We got one issue open yesterday, like this. It is this 6769, and it's actually a user who's doing this is using a proxy, an HTTP proxy, and he specifies and the key is this little thing. He specifies an HTTP URL with :80 in it, like that, which is perfectly fine. That's a valid URL and everything. But when curl sends the request to this proxy, it goes off like this, which means that it sends the :80 in the get line, and since this sends it to a proxy, it sends the full URL here in the get line. It says with :80 in the get, but without :80 in the host header, for the host header, which is actually fine. Well, it's actually not fine. That's pretty much what this report says. So it's not the example.org :80, we should either strip the :80 from the URL, or we should add it to the host header. And that's what my fix of yesterday did. It stripped it from that URL. Because sending host headers to servers with :80 for default ports has turned out to be problematic in the past. So I proposed a pull request, well, a change that removes that :80 when talking to a proxy when the remote URL, when asking for HTTP URL. Really sort of in-depth HTTP connect thing related protocol-y yucky thing. Anyway, that's what we do here and what I do here. So let me go back to this. So hello everyone. Yes, so 6676, that's the issue number. 6676. Wow, sorry, I don't. Messing up my screens here. So here's a URL for everyone. So basically, here's the key. We can run this and it says segmentation fault. So if we try it out ourselves in some fun place like this, we can, sorry, that's wrong. If we run curl and we run it on that command line, it's just doing LDAP against an Debian server. Boom, segmentation fault. That's how my installed curl is 7.74.0. The development version seg faults. Can even do it if we do it with Valgrind. That's so I know something about this crash and why it happens. In this release of curl, we are doing a pretty big refactor of how we point to internal structs, really, when we associate transfers and connections. So previously in curl, in actually since pretty much forever, we have had a pointer from the connection object back to the transfer object. So we could pass in a connection object everywhere and we could get back the transfer object from that. But we've removed that pointer now to simplify. But in some aspects it didn't simplify things, it actually made it more complicated. And in this case, I think this crash is related to my refactor. So if I instead gdb args and we run it, and then we can see that it's a reference of a null pointer in OpenLDAP 746. So here's the code. That's why it's wrong. And we can see here that we extract the data pointer, which is the curl easy handle is the transfer object, and in the transfer object we have a pointer to the connection object. That's the con pointer. And of course in the connection object we have a pointer to the LDAP info. But the connection pointer here is 0. This says we have no connection, and we have a transfer. We have a transfer, no connection. That's odd. And I'm going to figure it out. We're 8 days away from release, so it would be really good to have this fixed before that. I'm sure we should be able to work it out. Let's start by doing this. We run it with verbose, and then we can see performing. Oh yeah, we can see that it goes all the way to done. So it considers itself complete. We don't need to do anything more. Is it reasonable to rewrite curl with Rust? No, it's not reasonable, I think. I, I've said it before, but I don't believe in rewriting things from scratch. I think that's just you just get everything back, but kind of a long loop around. No, my approach, I don't have anything against Rust, but there are a lot of things to consider. But I'd say that my primary approach to Rust in curl is to allow parts to get written in Rust, and particularly optional backends, so that we can support curl using backends written in Rust. Like, for example, we are starting to support the Hyper backend. We can support Russell's backend and the Quiche backends, stuff like that, that are written in Rust. So when you build curl with those backends, you get more Rust written components in a curl. Well, not actually executable, but in the same library, sort of. And I think that is the way forward, to make sure that more and more backends and potentially rewrite curl to support more backends in that way. I wouldn't rewrite curl in any language. I wouldn't rewrite it in C either, because I don't believe in rewriting things. I believe in slowly, gradually fix things, polish bugs, improve it over time, and just keep on hammering until things work the way they should. And rewriting, and also Rust is a very limited language. First, it's not mature enough, as we've seen already with both Hyper and Russell's, that is coming to maturity now, and that's good. I don't mean to say anything else, but curl supports a bazillion platforms where Rust isn't present. So right now we serve the world better by having it in curl. Having it in C, because now more platforms, more users can use curl, and I actually think that is better. I think it's better to have a good library in C for everyone, rather than have it slightly better, perhaps, written in Rust for a subset of those users. But that's just me. Anyone is free to write their own curl version in Rust. So this crash, then clearly this callback is called when the transfer is already done, which is surprising. So I'm just going to do this. There's clearly no connection left anymore. So let's see what happens if we I'm not going to say that OpenLDAP is weird, but it is weird. And the documentation is also slightly lacking. So it's really hard sometimes to understand exactly how we're supposed to do things when we use OpenLDAP. But I'm going to assume that we can return 0 from this if we don't do anything. Just gonna make a blind attempt first. But it's if I would fix the bug now, we're 6 minutes into the live stream. Isn't that a bit boring? I should really keep it going for a little bit more. All right, it's not fixed. Let's see what happens. Is there another? Yes, it's the same thing in the other. There's another callback, but there's both a read and write callback. So we better do the same precaution in there. We don't do any read and writes unless we have a connection. That seems like a fair. It's hard to do a read and write from a connection if there is no connection. And bam. There is no crash anymore. And yes, LDAP is super weird. I actually don't get LDAP at all. So I'm just, I'm getting a crash. Ooh, how do I fix the crash? I don't mean to say that I actually understand LDAP. But yeah, well, sure, I can breakpoint just before the crash, but as long as I run with GDB and I have a solid, reliable crash point like this, I don't have to do a breakpoint. I can just run into the crash and then figure out things as the crash happen. But sure, I mean, I could, if I would revert this fix like this, if we put the crash back, I can do like this, you know. So as you can see, I like GDB from the terminal, and that's so. Here's the crash, and I can look at it. Here's the code. It actually crashes on this point in the code. So I could put a breakpoint on the line before if I wanted to, but like this. And if I start it again from the beginning, I get a breakpoint on that line. But in this case, it will be called multiple times, so I'm not sure which of the times when the crash is actually happening. So that's why I figured it was actually easier to just do like this: run, crash, and then figure out what happens. Well, there's a null pointer, so that's why. Morning. You know, I actually suspected that this bug would be a little bit more complicated to find, just because of my previous refactor of the pointers from the easy handle and the connect data handle, but this was a little bit too easy. What did I miss? So let's do this. Check with Valgrind 2. See if that's what's a good thing, because that's not happy. In LDAP disconnect. Unbind. That is clearly invalid read. I wonder if something is going on with that as well. Okay, so yes, it wasn't quite that easy as I first said. So I guess that is makes it a bigger problem. What? So LDAP is complicated as a protocol in general, and I think using Open LDAP is not making LDAP less complicated. So now let's see what to do. Invalid read of size. Okay, we run it again and we put a breakpoint on line 747. Bam. And I imagine that this pointer is wrong in the last one. It's not. invalid read of size 8. So it seems that the data pointer might be pointing to, yeah, the data pointer is already freed, I believe. That's a yeah. So set somewhere I set the data. Here it is. I do this with this function, I believe. I set the data pointer here, which is a pointer to the transfer object in curl. It says that as a callback pointer. It passes that to my callbacks, and I think that survives longer than the transfer itself. So we get that pointer sent to us after the transfer is actually already gone. Which is, of course, not good. So I want to, I'm going to see if I can, if that is the situation. So I can see here, it says close here. Here is where we easy cleanup. That's where we shut down a transfer object or an easy handle. So the easy handle is already gone. So I'm going to make disconnect. So I need to clear this pointer at a suitable point in time so that I don't get I don't want to have this pointer anymore when I, the problem here is that this is within the LDAP specific data, and well, and there's a disconnect. Let me just try this out first and see if I just, in here, I want to set the pointer to be null, but I don't have all the information right now. SB is undeclared. What is SB? Oops. I didn't bisect when it started, but I'm pretty sure that it was my refactor of. I can actually. I'm pretty sure it is this one that caused it. This commit. but I can't just revert that commit because we don't have that association, because previously I could pass in a connection pointer, and from the connection pointer we could get to the transfer data. Now we can't do that anymore. There's no association from connection to transfer, only from transfer to connection, only one way. No, I think it's a reference to Curl's 23rd birthday, which was on this Saturday. So Curl is actually 23 years and 3 days by now. I was a little bit surprised by all the attention, because I usually write a blog post about it just about every year, that sure, Curl is blah blah years old, and this time it was noticed and discussed much more widely than usually, which is fun, of course. Okay, it still crashes, so that was not good enough. I just want to make sure. All right, it doesn't still. Well, Curl is at least older than both my kids. My kids are actually 14 and 17. They're pretty big too, but Curl is way older. Actually, Curl is older than a lot of things in my life. I was a bit scared that I would get this problem. I think I've seen this with other code, that there's probably, when we set the pointer to the callback within OpenLDAP, is probably already stored somewhere and ready to get used in a callback. So when we set it to null, it's too late. And that is complicated, because now I need to introduce some weird indirection to check if it's still valid or not. How that. And I think it's pretty lame of OpenLDAP to do this. Yes, I do. Even if I can understand why it happens. So pretty much I set the callback pointer to null here. Or maybe, what was I a bit premature here? Was it so that I actually got I know, here I go around blaming others when the fault was mine. Okay. I was stupid. So I set the pointer to null, and then of course I actually get a null. So in this case, I actually need to, because if it is null, we can't read from the pointer. So maybe like that. And okay, I'm trying out things first. We can always clean, or rather I need to clean it up. If I can just make it not crash, bam, and have Valgrind to be happy. Can I do that? Is it happy? Yeah, it looks happy. Okay, that's a good start. Okay, no crash, no Valgrind alerts. So I better, then I just need to make sure that the code is fine for a pull request. So a lot of people ask me how we do development in curl, and I do development pretty much the same way as anyone else who's providing code to curl. I write changes, I make a pull request, and I submit it to the project. And then we review the code, and then when it's reviewed and we're all happy, the CIs are green, we merge it. And sure, sometimes I actually review my code mostly myself and merge it when everything is green. but it's still the same model and method as for everyone else. Okay. This thing is only done for if we're using LDAP S. Maybe we don't have to care about it. But the question is can the read callback get called? I better make that precaution in the read callback as well. Just to be sure. And this red thing is my editor's mark for trailing white space. And I have a key binding to remove trailing white space in the buffer. So like this, if it's there, I press my little magic key binding and the trailing white space is gone. Magic. So, okay. I often, as you see, build curl in the terminal, or I can also just build it from within Emacs like this. I tend to mix doing either or both. It's okay. LDAP is also complicated in the regards that we don't have enough proper tests for LDAP, because pretty much everything in curl we test with our own custom test servers. So we have a bunch of, in the tests directory, we have a server directory too, and we have a lot of different test servers there that the test suite fires up, and then we run tests against that server to make sure that things work the way they should. But we don't have any test server for LDAP, because LDAP is so complicated that I haven't ever made up any decent test server for that. One of these days I probably should. And it's also best to write our own, because it's supposed to be as stupid and as possible. So just the test case can tell the server what to respond and how to act, so that we can test all sorts of various crazy things. So it's better if it's not a complete server. It's just in pretty much a TCP server, and the test case tells the server how to respond. But we haven't done that for LDAP. So we don't have enough tests, which makes it easy to break LDAP, and that's probably pretty much what this is. Lack of testing made this bug get or remain unnoticed for a while. Okay. If you have any other curl bugs I should dive into, then feel free to submit it or point it out or ask me any question. I'm going to make a pull request with this, because I think it's pretty much okay like this. Maybe I should, in that case, the disconnect case. Where are we? I only have to do this if I can do like that. So I can narrow the scope a little bit. Maybe even more. Does that? Yeah, seems to be okay. So basically just check a little bit more for that all the pointers are valid, and if they are, do the things. Yeah. So create a branch LDAP valid pointer. The name of the branch isn't important. open LDAP. Make sure. So it fixes issue 6676 reported by Emil Engler. I'm sure no, it wasn't. He commented. It was actually Patrick Monrat. And it's supposed to close some issues. Well, this PR when we're done. Open LDAP. Avoid null pointer dereferences. It's a bit vague, but yeah. Ooh, let's loot this. It's actually follow up to that commit, because it is. That was incomplete. So let's push this, and then we go to the browser and we check, or rather create a pull request out of this. Boom. Do a label for LDAP? We do. That's the change we did. Kaboom. And then there's a notification sent to the IRC channel, and of course there's a mail or notification sent to everyone who subscribes to that. And we have a bunch of CIs getting started. And the fun thing, or if you look at the CI builds here, there are a bunch of them here, quite a few. And if you look, some of them are also bundled, so there are many. For example, the AppWeigher one here, there's a single line, but that's it's in itself then this amount. I think it's around 30 of them. And here's the Travis one. The Travis one is also a bunch of jobs, 33 of them. So there's quite a few in total, almost, or there's around 100 of them. They will take a few hours to complete. There are a few that are always going to turn up red because they're flaky, and we're working hard to make sure that they're not red all the time. But when you have 100 CI jobs, it's really hard to make sure that they're all green when they're supposed to be green. So at least deep CI, there's a static code analyzer. Didn't find anything. MuseDev is another code analyzer. LGTM is also a static code analyzer. There it is. So we have, I think we have more, but I thought we have more. So there's a bunch of static code analyzers, and then of course all the builds and all the other regular tests and everything. But as I mentioned, I don't think we have any LDAP tests, so I don't expect this to find anything really when the code analyzers are happy with it. We'll see. It'll have to sit there and cook for a few hours. So I'll have to do that outside of this stream, I think, unless we will grow bored. Oh, I haven't seen this. TFTP warning fix. Oh, that is because I changed something, right? I don't really believe in this fix. Okay, so yesterday I fixed a little thing in TFTP, not the most common protocol. TFTP is I'm not exactly sure who's using TFTP, and I know that we've used it in the past. I've used it to like download images to embedded targets, like bootloaders and stuff like that, because TFTP is really easy to implement. It uses UDP and is a very simple basic protocol. And curl has supported TFTP for a very long time. And yesterday, the other day at least, someone filed a bug and said that curl actually times out TFTP transfers after 1 hour by default. And you could set the timeout to something else, and then it would use something else instead. But the point is that we don't have any timeout for 1 hour for any protocols. It was a mistake, and it turned out that it was true, and I fixed it, I thought, and apparently I then caused this warning instead, which is funny. It means that I didn't really look at the CI jobs properly, or I didn't pay attention. So my fault, which then sometimes happens when I review my own code, that I'm a bit sloppy, so then I do mistakes like this. Time and portable code is really totally freaking annoying, because time_t is sometimes 32-bit, sometimes 64-bit, sometimes signed, sometimes unsigned. And in this case, of course, we have an assignment here that mixes two different types, and a silly Windows build has on MSys it could have a 32-bit time t, and our time here for time diff is not 32-bit. Compiler warning. The suggestion is to solve it with a typecast, but okay, that works up to, it's in milliseconds. So milliseconds, 32-bit number of milliseconds, that's like 50 days. So the timeout is probably usually less than 50 days, but it's not right. And we don't use max time for anything. Look, this is a better way to fix it. Get rid of it. Do we use start time? We do. No, we don't. Remove start time too. I like this better. Oh, sorry. Thanks for pointing that out. I was I was sitting here editing things that you didn't see. Right. Well, time t is done like that to be portable. So you're supposed to be able to use time t whatever platform you're on, but you're not supposed to depend on the size of it. I think that's the theory. In practice, it's really hard to actually not depend on the size if you want to deal with things like in this case, when the code looked like this. No, max time where I'll go back to. Let's restore it, because I can fix this again. The code actually looks like this. So here's the line, timeout in milliseconds. Max time is a time t field, and timeout milliseconds is time diff underscore t, and time diff underscore t is a type we create in curl, so it's a private type, and this one is likely to be 64-bit, much more likely than time t is. I'd say likely because it can be smaller, but on anything reasonably modern it is 64-bit, while time t is not always 64-bit, even if it's a modern system. That's not my fault, so this generates a warning, but as I noticed, we don't even need max time because look, searching for max time in the code, we only set it in the struct and then at that point. So remove it from the struct like that, gone. No more usage of that. And then I noticed this little thing. Oh, we set start time here with the time, so it gets the number of seconds epoch time into this variable. And do we use it? No, it's only created in the struct, so we remove that one as well. So let's not use that. And then we can just verify that everything still builds fine, and yeah, and then we have removed removing code is good, right? 7 lines gone because they're not used anymore. I wonder if so TFTP is an ancient protocol, and if we look at what we've done in the TFTP file over time, well, actually just because I'm saying that we haven't changed it much, so I could find a lot of changes in 2021. So yeah, it's been modified somewhat more than I actually expected. But we can see that I have a little script that checks how old the code is in the file. So it's 90% of the code, so the 80% of the code is still older than 2000 days. 90% of the code is older than 569 days. So it's pretty old. Still, I'm going to create a new branch then. So Gilles Voland, I don't know how to pronounce his name here. He did that pull request on how to fix the compiler warning, but I think removing that code completely is better than fixing it with a typecast. Typecast is okay too, right? Because the variable isn't even used, but this is one step better. Remove unused and it's a follow-up to this commit. Yes, exactly. TFTP is quite common in exactly that, booting something on a local network. And I think on a local network it might be make some sense, since it's totally insecure and it's totally stupid. And I mean, resending stuff with the TFTP is also stupid. And that's why it was so amusing that this user found the timeout after 1 hour, because it's not typically a 1 hour transfer protocol. You usually just transfer something like in 30 seconds or 2 minutes or something, not 1 hour. But anyway, people are different. And also this timeout problem has been there since, I guess, since I wrote the implementation or something. So it's been there for probably 20 years or so. TFTP, remove unused struct fields. Are they struct fields or are they struct members? I can never really make up my mind. Let's call them struct fields this time. Yeah, let's not mention the compiler warning. It's not really relevant here. So let's make another pull request out of that. So I'm pushing that little thing. Let's see if I can show you the right screen this time, or right thing. TFTP. It's okay. So 6781. Oops, wrong. I propose 6781 instead. Okay, that was fun. So yeah, you can send your spam messages somewhere else, please. Okay, so other issues to deal with. Crash. I have a few other crashes in the issue tracker, but they're more complicated. Actually, this one, I think I tried to reproduce it. So let's see what happens if I can reproduce it. That could be fun. Okay, back to my little terminal. Yeah, I should. I actually have not. There's not been a problem before. We've had a very casual and nice crowd of people here, so we haven't had any people sending silly spam and you know, this kind of annoying messages. So I haven't worked on it. So maybe if this becomes more common, then I'll deal with it. Otherwise, we just. I understand that very few will actually click and use those spammy things, but they're annoying, and especially when I show this in my stream, it seems like, yeah, this will be recorded, so now everyone will see that stupid spam URL here on screen for eternity. So where am I? I should be able to just remove the working on thing, because there it's gone. I don't work on it anymore. What do I work on? So I have. Just wanted to make sure that I haven't. I have this alias for Git to pull from remote master in case anyone else has committed merged code that I forgot about. So we have this lib SSH2 crash reported. SFTP, is it localhost? I know that I had a test user before. Clearly not that anymore. I actually once did it like this, I believe I used this test user on my live stream like a year ago or so, and I set it up with this password, and yes, my localhost can actually be accessed from remote. So someone actually figured it out and logged into my host with this test user that I showed on my live stream. So just a word of caution that using test users on a live stream that actually is accessible from the internet is not a really good idea. In my case, of course, this was just a stupid user that couldn't do anything, so I could just remove the user again. It was all fine, but still made me remember that it's what I show you here is not always I mean, it can be used for whatever purposes. Okay, so it's not, is it a problem like this? No, it's not like this either. And you see a lot of output here because I have a debug build, so I get a lot of extra. If you do this with a regular build, you don't get to see all that crap that I get to see because I have extra rubbish output. But it didn't help me. I couldn't reproduce anyway. I wonder. I think in this case, it's a Mac OS thing, of course. Dylib gives it away. Keyboard callback. I wonder if I can do, if I do it with a user name just like this. That worked fine. I should, if I do it like this, if I log in with my user, I enter my password, boom, and I get a directory listing of my. That's exactly how it's supposed to work. If I use Valgrind on that, one more time, I was just too early. Password, boom, Valgrind, happy. So what more does he write there? So yeah, right, he's checking for a null pointer in there. Why I don't really understand why I don't get, why I can't reproduce it then. Looks like the code has moved a little bit, but So he has a null pointer dereference here because it assumes that con is that it works. Keyboard callback. Oh. So it looks like it actually is a mistake here, because this seems to assume that we get a connect data pointer to the callback, which I don't think we should, because that's, I think, so now I'm going to have to make sure that we actually get that callback. And I figured it might be that I actually don't have the SSH is complicated because they have these different authentication mechanisms and I can never quite remember them. So there's both the keyboard and then there's some interactive password. I don't remember the names of them. So I'm going to read a little bit more here and see if I can figure it out. Right, password. Yeah, exactly. It has password and it has the keyboard. So I think we don't get the keyboard callback called. And since we don't do that, we don't get the bug. Interesting. Yeah, that is clearly wrong at least. So I think this at least has to be. That's the downside, right? With passing along void pointers, it's easy to mess up the types without the compiler telling us when we do that. So now it's not going to compile because now we are using a pointer that so yeah, so exactly. So there's a keyboard interactive, and that's different than the password authentication method. And that is, I mean, the difference between keyboard interactive and password is, of course, a detail. So let me see if I can figure out this connected user. So I think that we're trying to get the name and password from a connection, possibly before there is a connection. No. Sorry. there it is, and I'm going to con user. That's the field we want. And it could be a null, or rather it is a null pointer to begin with. Unless it's set to something, then we set it to the... And we store it for per connection so that we can keep it around so that we know for which user that particular connection is set up. Otherwise, we also have a user per transfer. So I have a handyman going on in the background. I don't know if you can hear them. But I might be able to, I might be forced to actually shut down the stream at some point soon. But anyway, that's why I'm also a little bit distracted, because I can hear them downstairs, my wife and someone. Setting up the username here. So I need to put back the code, and I'm just going to see if I can figure out a test case that perhaps exercises this code, and see if I can just run a test case. But it's weird because the test case doesn't trigger this segfault, so maybe I need something else. Don't know really why haven't I seen this. So I built the entire test suite, and that is fun, but now I'm going to run it. I want to run just the SFTP tests, and I do it without Valgrind, and they're all running fine. Yep. So I'm going to server. I want to try to see how I run the SFTP server. Okay, SFTP. What is it? SSH config. I don't remember even how we run the SFTP. Sometimes, just sometimes, our test suite is a bit complicated. it's good when it works and everything, but it's sometimes a little bit hard to penetrate when I try to remember how we did things. So we do this find SFTP. That's not in there. So it's find SFTP somewhere. SSH help it's called, of course. Oh, it's just searching for the SFTP. Ooh, right, but I don't need SFTP. I think it uses SFTP, the command line tool, just to verify that the server is there. But we don't need that. Oh, here it is. Morning, Frank. This test suite is so opaque, so I can't even remember how I did this. So I'm getting there, slowly, but maybe. Oh, I think it might be called secure server. No, it's not. There it is, SSH server. Okay. You wouldn't believe I actually wrote this, but okay. Keyboard Interactive. And you can tell this has been going on for a while, since it talks about really old open SSH versions. Where are we now with OpenSSH? Doesn't even tell the version like that. 8.4. Okay, so yeah, so the test, they don't have Keyboard Interactive enabled, so this is my own local host. I just wanted to see what it says. So SSH is a different protocol than, yeah, so I don't have Keyboard Interactive on my own server. So maybe if I can change that. Yeah, I think that's a little bit too much for me to figure that out right now. It's a challenging thing to do, actually, to do live stream development, because I have to keep talking, think, and actually do something at the same time. It's not always the optimal entertainment value in the stream when I sit there thinking about things and just, scratch my head and don't figure it out. But I will do this off stream actually, so I will go back and see if I can enable keyboard interactive on my local server instead. And see if I can just get the callback for keyboard interactive to work, and then fix or work on that patch. This fix that is being suggested here is not complete, and as you can see, there are several CI failures here anyway for the pull request, so it's not there yet anyway. But I imagine that it could be a good idea to have it fixed before the release in 8 days. So I should get going on that. But otherwise, on stream, what can we do more? I have a few other nasty ones that are also... Maybe I could take a moment and just maybe merge this. So, you know, I mentioned how hard it is to make sure that all the CI builds go green all the time when they should go green, and actually we're in a pretty long streak of not having our CI builds go green, even though they should have gone green. So out of the 902 something CI builds, we always have about 3 that are red no matter what, so independently if the fixes are good or bad. And one of the problems that showed up the other day, a new problem that showed up the other day, is that on Azure upgraded something in their systems on their Ubuntu builds. So we build a bunch of builds on Ubuntu on Azure, and they started to fail for one particular test, the test 433. And test 433, it sets an environment variable. Let me show you, because I think this is it's an interesting challenge. So the test sets this variable xdg config home, which is a way to basically tell a tool which directory to use as a config home of your config files. So it's being checked according to some logic, but it doesn't matter, because this test then verifies that it actually works. So it sets this environment variable, and it clears the home variable, and it clears the curl home variable to make sure that it actually works. And when done, curl should find the .curlrc in that directory, and it should use that when it makes a request. That's what the test verifies. It works on 4 of our 5 CI services, but on Azure it started to fail just a week or 2 ago. Why? Turns out that whenever we run when we run curl on Azure, this variable is always set to something, not the value that we set in our curl in our test script, but to something, I mean to the default value. So something in that system on Azure sets the variable without us being able to override it. So I try to just delete .bashrc in our tests to just make sure that isn't the one, but it doesn't help. I spent hours on installing a new Ubuntu 2004 virtual machine on my machine, try to reproduce it. It's not on the Ubuntu. Ubuntu by default doesn't do that. It works fine there. So it's something with Ubuntu on Azure doing this. Conclusion, let's disable that test case on Azure for the moment and just move on. So that's what this PR is. It removes, it disabled test 433 on Azure Ubuntu because something ruins it. Highly annoying, but also really hard to figure out. it's a very time-consuming thing since it takes a long time to just push and pull, and it's me. So let me see. It was actually, yeah, it was actually Mark who reported it. So let's merge that fix. I have the proper keywords in there, and I will push it. Why? It's always a bad sign when it asks from a passphrase. Why would it do that? Possibly because of something I did with my SSH thing. Okay. So I'm deleting the branches there. I'm going to delete the branch. So when I have that closest keyword in the commit, it closes the pull request, and I delete the branch. I have this habit of creating the branches within the curl repository for, well, old habit, but I started it just because originally the curl repository was hosted as bagder/curl. So it actually, there are a bunch of things in the world still using bagder/curl, and it's a redirect on GitHub. So I don't want to create my own forked version on bagder/curl, because then it would be my forked version people would get and not the redirect one, the redirected one. Okay, so I saw the notification in the IRC channel, so it went through fine. Looks good there. And let us go back and see where did we go with in the open LDAP. And here we can see that some checks were not successful. Oh, 6 are failing. That's not good. But I don't test on Raspberry Pi specifically, but okay, here, I'll show you. So in testing in general, first, I mean, if we can take this PR as an example here, right? So you see all these CI builds that run, they test curl on. If we start from the beginning, it'll run fuzzing on the code for 40 minutes, I think, using the OSS fuzz infrastructure. So it's going to torment the code for a bunch of time to make sure that we didn't do anything ridiculously silly, and it will then build on this is GitHub Actions, so it will build on GitHub infrastructure and test on Mac OS. It will run here's static code analyzer, verifies the code that it looks fine, and Mac OS, different build options on Mac OS, blah blah blah, different TLS backends on Mac OS, lots of Mac OS things, and then it'll build on Ubuntu, on Azure. That's the other symbol. I think this might be the test 433. I'll check it out. I'll just get back to and then so most of these are testing on x86, and then we go into and then there's FreeBSD tests, and here's a Solaris on also x86, but a different operating system at least, and then here on Travis we have here's the test on Travis, and down here we have ARM64. So on ARM64, here we actually have also on PowerPC 64 little endian. So on this, and if you go here, you can see the ARM64 build, and the ARM64 is then doing the same thing as all the others, basically, right? So it's I'm actually not sure which particular hardware this is. I guess it's possible to figure that out. It's yeah, something Linux ARM64. Yeah, I don't know which hardware it is. I don't have to care. So it's actually, but it's an ARM64, so it does the build, and it runs. It builds the test suite, and here you can see it runs all the tests. So this is an ARM64, and eventually it'll be green. It actually on this particular Travis instance of ARM64, it's actually a bit flaky. So it happens that it actually fails a little bit randomly. But and of course it's hard to say if it's really flaky or if it's truly a bug somewhere, maybe. So it's but it usually turns out green, and I think it's fine. In general, it would probably be better to have more builds on other platforms than x86, but we don't. We use these, as you can see, we have this plethora of different CI services, and they are not very ARM focused. So maybe we will get more ARM over time. In particular, I guess it would be good to have M1 builds on Mac OS too, to make sure that we actually don't mess up ARM on Mac OS, which might, which should be more important to them for that platform going forward. We actually, and you can see here, and we also have S390 builds on Travis, which but we only have one of each, and as you can see, we have 30 x86 64 builds, and we have 3 on other platforms. So and none of them are big endian. Maybe S90 is big endian. Makes me actually we don't actually build on anything big endian in the CI builds. Well, we don't move to anything for CIs. Again, we're using 5 CI services. We're using GitHub, Azure, Travis, Cirrus, and something more. We have them all. So that's good. So 390 is big endian. That's cool. So actually, I'll show you. We have this little. I have this little graph. We can see this. So this graph on the top here, it shows the different app. Or I forgot AppVeyor. AppVeyor is pretty good. So we have these 5 different CI services, and you can see the purple one is all them combined. So this is, and then you can see number of different jobs on different services. So our goal is rather to spread out the builds on all the services, so that we have an even load. So as you can see here, we're underusing Cirrus quite a lot, so it would be better to move things from Travis to Cirrus, so to reduce the total build time, possibly. But also, we're sponsored by Travis, and we have a sponsor that is paying for AppVeyor, so we're actually getting more power on Travis and AppVeyor than the regular, just the free tier. So it's also good for us to use those on which we have a little bit more power. Right, but we're still on Travis.org, and Travis is also sort of sponsoring us for a higher tier than the free one. So I'm not sure exactly where we are with Travis, but in general we will go wherever, and we are going to keep on. as you can see, we have a lot of CI, and I think a lot of CI helps us a lot. So I'm going to keep on working on trying to make sure that they are effective and useful. So if there are new services coming up, we will use them. If the old existing one goes bad, we will switch them over to something else. So it's just, you know, business as usual. It would be good to get more non-x86 builds going, but I don't think it's terribly important, because I think in general we have users doing that, and we have doing a fair amount of builds anyway. So we're usually, actually, we very rarely have problems with the code being not x86 compatible. That's not the problems we have typically. So, and it's been a while since I live streamed, and I've shown this dashboard before, but this dashboard has grown significantly over time, and I've added a lot of graphs over time. And you might know that I like graphs, so there will be more graphs going forward. And now it's a pretty good way to get a overview of the project. Things are happening and changing. So lots of graphs. Okay, yeah, that's about the CIs. So there are a lot of CI going. And right, they were failing, and this is Ubuntu on, so Ubuntu on Azure. Yes, those graphs are run. They're updated daily. So I have I actually could in theory update them more often, but I also do to be able to do the graphs for GitHub, I need to pull a lot of data off GitHub, and I don't want to do that more than daily because they have a rate limit, and I have to pull a lot of JSON and parse a lot of JSON to get stuff like, for example, I have graphs for number of, what do I do? Like this. Open and issues and pull requests. So I need to, in this case, this particular graph then goes through all the thousands of issues in JSON format and parse them. So it's enough to do it daily, and it works pretty good. Of course, all the graphs and everything is, I have a separate Git repository with all the source code, and I've learned quite a lot of GNU-plot to be able to do this. So all these graphs are made with GNU-plot, and they're all individual scripts with GNU-plot. So in general, I have a Perl script that generates a CSV, and that CSV is turned into this graph. And in general, there's one Perl script and one GNU-plot script for each graph, if you ever wanted to see how it's done. So here's the Azure pipeline job. Go to that, and we can check out the, here we can see that the disable IPv6, it just runs a configure script that disable IPv6 in the build because it's useful. Then I can check out the tests, and it says here in the bottom 433 failed. Which is that particular that's a particular bug in the 433 that I just landed here. So we can ignore that particular build failure for now, so it'll work better in the next build, we hope. I think stuff like that is what makes it hard to make sure that it makes it really hard to keep the CI builds green all the time, or rather that's why they're very rarely green. See some activity behind me, so it's more action going on. So we see that pull request is going on fine, the CI jobs, and the CI job to remove the TFTP struct fields that weren't used is also looking good, of course, and that too failed or fails Azure CI jobs, the same ones, I'm pretty sure. Well, I know you'll see my daughter pass by in the background a few times too, and I know she doesn't enjoy when she can't leave her room without getting seen in the background of my video, since her room is over there and the stairs to downstairs over there, so she has to move past me in the background. I think it's fun. Makes more things happen on the stream, right? Because it's just me here, my face is not that much fun. Okay, so I think we're in a pretty good position here. I could also just mention that we had this little bug report on this -- create tiers option, which is a fun option that makes curl create the local directory hierarchy if you use according to some conditions, and we're not setting the correct modes, more permissions on the file, or on the directory entries that we create, or rather maybe not the correct one, maybe not the ones that you think it should set. It's actually more restricted than you would assume. So this report says, well, we should set it 777, and we should let umask remove the bits that the user doesn't want to, and I agree with that. But I also, since we did it the wrong way from the beginning, and it's been like this for 18 years, and now adding more bits to the permissions suddenly in a new release, we haven't really come up with a way where that couldn't cause problems, because if curl would create directories, then suddenly would have more, or become world readable suddenly where it wasn't before. It'll probably be bad. So I'm probably going to just close this bug report as won't fix. It's a little bit sort of a nuisance, but it's been like this for 18 years. So if we manage to handle it for 18 years, maybe we can handle it for another time going forward, I think. Otherwise, we have 2 cookie bugs, but they are not going to be fixed in this release. Yeah, that she was. And I know Daniel Gustafsson is fixing these 2 cookie things, but they're going to be addressed after the release, because they're somewhat sensitive, and we don't want to rock the boat with just a week until the release. So nothing really alarming, I think, among the bug reports. And here we can see there are 4 HTTP 3 bug reports. HTTP 3 is still marked experimental in curl, and you have to enable it explicitly, and you have to pick a backend that they're all in alpha beta releases, so there's nobody expects HTTP 3 to work really solidly and reliably and performance wise to be performant. So these bugs are less critical. They're annoying, and we should fix them, but we'll have time. I know that we have some pull requests for HTTP 3 as well, I think, but All right, we have one. Oh, if you didn't know HTTP 3, you have a fun road ahead of you to read up. So HTTP 3 is quite a different beast. So no, I don't. This is not Vim. I don't use Vim. Not that it really doesn't matter what you use. And here you can actually, what you see on my screen is also, it's not really how my screen looks like, right? So I'm just exporting a bunch of windows. So you're just seeing a few windows of my screen, not my entire or my real screen. I should have my own face. Well, isn't that the pandemic way? So people are in meetings all the time, so you get to see yourself all the time. But no, and that's why. I mean, that's also why what you see on the stream is not actually the way I do work in general. I usually have more windows and more things at the screen at the same time. This is just more my polished show-off version. So yeah, the HTTP 3 is coming, and actually HTTP 3 is all done. The quick specification is going to ship, I think, before the HTTP 3.1, and it's already in line. So I think it's basically just weeks away or months. So it's in queue for getting published, just going to be, dealt with properly within the organization. But then I think the HTTP 3.1 in particular is going to be delayed somewhat because of work within the HTTP area. Well, first, of course, HTTP 2 and 3, there are a lot about changing how HTTP is transferred over the wire. So HTTP is still going to work the same in the aspect that you're doing requests and responses. You're sending headers, you get bodies, and you can send, all that is the same. So you don't have to care about that. So if you're a user of HTTP or a consumer of HTTP headers and stuff like that, you typically don't have to care about the version number, what's done sort of in that layer. So you can remain ignorant. So the browser will handle that, and curl will handle that, and whatever you're transferring HTTP with will handle that for you. It might be good to know if you want to do things like optimize your stuff for particular versions and know how it actually works underneath. But usually you can get away without knowing it. And of course, if you want to read up on HTTP 3 a little bit, I wrote this document, which is a little bit old now, but I think it's still fairly accurate, and it's translated into 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 languages. I think the main takeaway, if you don't know anything about HTTP 3, is that HTTP 3 is not done over TCP anymore. So TCP is out and QUIC is in, and QUIC is a protocol done over UDP, which changes things for like how to deploy things and how to set up infrastructure and how to run things internally in networks. So it's going to change how things are done in networks over the internet and everything, which is interesting. My OBS is acting all up, which I think is more of a sign that I should stop the stream and go do something else. I'm going to I'm going to stop the stream, and I'm going to go into my little see if I can reproduce that SSH bug and maybe work on a fix on that. And I was actually I'll see. Well, there's going to be DNS. DNS over HTTPS is interesting, and DNS over I talked about DNS over HTTPS a lot of times before. But nowadays, even Mac OS and Windows have native DOE support, so it's going to be even more common going forward. And curl supports DNS over HTTPS. But I'm going to try to make another stream soon. And if you have any bugs, submit issues and questions and stuff, and we can do some more fun live streams later on. I usually try to just have some good juicy bugs to work on before I start the live stream, because it's better when I have something concrete known to work on, and it makes a better stream and more fun things. But of course, your questions and feedback and interactions are also really fun, and it makes this a really fun thing and cool experiment or experience. Okay. I'm out for this time. Thanks for stopping by and chatting with me and having fun. See you around later on. Bye.